Is Rick Hosniger. I'm the Director for Library Services for the Northeast Independent School District in San Antonio, Texas.
So, tell us a little bit more about your job.
My job, to give a little bit of background for the organization and myself, we're a school district, a large school district of about 64,000 students. There are 64 campus libraries. We have 42 elementaries, 13 middle schools, 7 high schools, and one of those high schools has been operating as a joint use library for the past 8 years, and we have a second high school library that will be opening as a joint use library next year in cooperation with the San Antonio Public Library. So my role within the organization is basically as a program director. So that means for the most part I don't have the responsibility of supervising each campus librarian. That's a principal's job to do. But what I do is I provide direction to principals and librarians on what the program should look like, what type of scheduling they do for classes, guidelines for ordering and helping facilitate that ordering. We operate a processing center with 2 catalogers and 6 copy catalogers that process all of the books that come into our school district so that librarians don't have to do that on their campus. And then my role a lot of times is liaison, coach, trainer, those types of things as well. Fortunately, I have a few coordinators that work for me that also assist in all of those types of duties. So for the most part, my job is to provide direction for the overall program, communicating the goals of that program either to librarians, to parents, to other administrators and teachers.
Okay. So tell us about the role of strategic planning in your library.
For the most part, I would say when we're talking about strategic planning, our first and foremost guiding principle would be our state standards. And that would include our curriculum standards for all of our core subject areas, as well as our college and career readiness and the 21st century learning skills. Those are where we start. So our instruction is based on that, our collections are based on that, and that's where our program goes to, is from there. When we talk about collection within that role, I think some people, when they hear me just say the state standards, they're thinking, oh, you're only buying instructional materials that go along with lessons that are being taught in the classroom. And that isn't true at all. Well, it is, but it isn't, because one of our strands is reading for pleasure and becoming lifelong learners. So our collections have to be able to adapt for those needs of students as well, so that we can grow readers. So our collections have a wide range. We definitely feel that it needs to be a balanced collection. I go back to one of the things that one of my professors told me when I was in library school was, if you don't have at least 10% of your collection that you're not comfortable with, you're not doing a good job in collection development. And that means that just because I like it doesn't mean I'm meeting the needs of all of my customers or my students or whoever I'm serving. So within that, I would include titles when I was building a collection that, you know what, I wouldn't read that, I don't like that, or I don't even agree with that. But I include it in my collection anyway because I know I have readers and users that is their need.
Okay. So tell us a little about your collection development policy.
We have a standard district-wide policy set by the board. We are in the process of updating it right now and revising it. Our policy first begins with that we need to have a well-balanced collection. And within that collection, we need to meet the instructional needs of our students as well as their reading for pleasure. Within that, we also provide guidelines of review sources and that they should be looking for those reviews, and that way if there's a book challenge that comes across for some material somebody may find inappropriate for a school library, that they can come back and they can there's a method in order to challenge a book, and those reviews are a lot of times what helps keep materials in our libraries, because those professional review sources are very important. When it comes to the collection at our joint use libraries, it's done a little differently. Our main collection for the school is done by the school district. The collection for the public side of that library, which, by the way, I'm using the term side just meaning where the funding comes from. Everything's integrated, so there's nothing an interfile. So there aren't two separate facilities, it's one facility, but I'll say side of it, and I mean that from a funding perspective. So on the public library side, they do their own collection development. In the creation for this new library that we're opening in the fall, this new partnership, our librarians did have some input into some of the subscription type book services that we felt that needed to be included within that collection, and we provided them with our current collection for that library, so there wasn't a mass duplication of items, so that we could really expand that collection to be broader for our customer base. And if, let's say, there's a book challenge there, it would follow our district standard in our reconsideration, which actually starts at a campus level, and the campus level committee decides. If the parent objects to the decision, then it would go to the district, and if they object to that, then it would go on to the school board. And fortunately, that process has worked very well for us. Sure, we've had titles in the past that have been removed from the shelf or moved to a different level of campus, but the important part is that the process was followed, that the book did get a voice, and that a committee of parents, teachers, and librarians sat together and came up to a decision together on, is that book appropriate?
Okay, can you talk a little bit about, you said you're in the process of updating Dixonville policy. What's the process you're going through?
The first process I had to do is I sat down, I looked at the current policy, and the district I work for is in a very conservative area. Parts of our district are more conservative than others, and we had a few challenges, and when we were going through it, there were some parts of that process that were unclear, that I had worked for another district, and I liked a couple of the things that we did there within their policy a little better. So I took a look at the policy first. I made my recommendations of how that should look and what changes needed to be made. I also talked with our district attorney and the district's attorney, and consulted with him, and he provided feedback and talked a little bit about the process with me, that once I'm finished with that, it will go to our executive staff, which includes all of our superintendents, and they will make a recommendation of putting it forth to the school board, or they'll send it back to me to make more revisions, or they'll say what we have is fine. I've already had some of those discussions before I even started, and they agreed that it needed to be updated. We had some changes in other school policies, and ours isn't in alignment with the number of days and such like that for appeals and such. So we're trying to make everything consistent. So that's a part of it too, is to make it consistent with our other district policies, so that it makes it less confusing, and it provides a fair context, I think, to do that. So once it goes to the school board, it goes through a first reading and public comment, and then a second reading and public comment, and then it can become new policy.
Okay.
So it's actually a long process. It will take us about 6 months for it to go all the way through,
Okay.
from start to